I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now because I need to tell you about the day 40 strangers on a train collectively decided I was a doctor. And I, instead of correcting them, just went with it for 45 minutes across 3 stations until it became physically impossible to keep the lie going. This story ends with a standing ovation. A woman trying to give me her medical history and me hiding in a train toilet rehearsing an exit strategy. Stay with me. So here is the thing about me that you need to understand before any of this makes sense. I have one of those faces. You know the type. Calm, neutral, slightly serious looking even, when I am thinking about absolutely nothing. People have always mistaken me for someone who is in charge of things. I have been asked for directions in cities I have never been to. A stranger once handed me their baby at a wedding and walked away. I just held it because what else do you do? But nothing prepared me for what happened on that train. It was a regular Thursday. I was traveling back from a work trip. Long journey, 4 hours. I had my bag, my headphones, a book I was never actually going to read, and a Tupperware of rice and dal that my flatmate had packed for me because she is a saint. I found my seat, settled in, put my headphones on, ready to be completely invisible for 4 hours. This was the plan. The plan lasted 11 minutes. The first sign something was going wrong came from the seat across the aisle. An older gentleman, maybe 65, very distinguished looking, reading a newspaper, looked over at me, looked at my bag and said, "Are you traveling to the medical conference?" Now, the correct answer to this question is no. I am not a doctor. I have never been to a medical conference. The only conference I had been to that week was a sales review meeting where someone brought the wrong projector cable and we spent 40 minutes looking at each other. What I actually said was, "Sorry?" And he said, "The medical conference in the city, I saw your bag. You looked like you were headed there." And here is where it went wrong. Because instead of saying, "No, I am not a doctor, I do not know what conference you mean, I travel with a Tupperware of dal," I said, and I quote, "Ah, yes, something like that, something like that, something like that." What does that even mean? I do not know what came over me. I think my brain just defaulted to agreeable. I did not want to be rude. I did not want to make it awkward. So I just agreed in the vaguest possible terms and nodded confidently like a doctor would. He smiled, nodded back and went back to his newspaper. I went back to my headphones. Crisis avoided. Nobody needs to know anything except Pete. He had clearly told the people around him because within 3 minutes, the woman in the seat directly behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, are you a doctor? My husband has been having some back pain and I want you to really feel this moment with me. The exact moment where you realize the hole you have dug has a second, deeper hole underneath it. That is where I was." I turned around. She was looking at me with this completely genuine, hopeful expression. Her husband, sitting next to her, was also looking at me. They both had this quiet trust on their faces that made me feel immediately terrible. And reader, I said, "I am, yes. What seems to be the issue?" I said what seems to be the issue like I was about to whip out a stethoscope. My brain had completely abandoned me. I was operating on pure social autopilot. And the autopilot had apparently decided we were a doctor now. He told me about his back pain. Lower left side, comes and goes. Worse when he sits for long periods. And I sat there, nodding slowly, doing what I can only describe as a thinking face, and said, "That sounds like it could be posture related. Make sure you are getting up and walking around every hour. Stay hydrated. And definitely see your GP when you get a chance." He nodded like I had just told him the meaning of life. His wife said, "See, I told you it was posture." I turned back around. My hands were slightly sweating. My Tupperware of dal was looking at me with judgment. Now at this point, right now, I should have said something. Quietly told one of them, "Listen, I am so sorry, I think there was a misunderstanding. I am not actually a doctor. I was just being agreeable and it escalated. Please ignore everything I said. I did not do that. What I did instead was put my headphones back in, look out the window, and hope that the universe would sort this out for me, which is, as a life strategy, extremely flawed. Because word travels fast on a quiet train. Over the next 20 minutes, I was approached 3 more times. A man who wanted to know if his cholesterol medication could be taken with grapefruit juice. A young woman who had a rash on her wrist and wanted a second opinion. I said things like, "This looks reasonable, and hydration can affect this, and definitely worth discussing with your doctor," his actual doctor. He folded the printout back up and said, "Thank you, that is very reassuring." I had become the train doctor. The passengers had a train doctor now. Me, a person whose last interaction with the medical system was Googling whether it was normal to feel tired after eating too much rice. And then, someone told the train conductor. The conductor came down the aisle, spotted me, and said, loudly enough for the entire carriage to hear, "Ah, we have a doctor on board. Wonderful. Just so you know, we do have a first aid kit at the front if you are ever needed." The entire carriage looked at me. I said, "Great, wonderful. Let us hope it does not come to that." There was a small, warm ripple of laughter. I smiled back like a doctor, like a confident, collected, completely legitimate medical professional who had not been lying to strangers for 35 minutes on a train. Inside, I was a completely different scene. I was calculating how many more stops until I could get off. I was mentally rehearsing what I would say if someone actually had a medical emergency. I was considering whether pretending to fall asleep was a viable exit strategy. I was also, I will be honest with you, a little bit proud of how well I was holding it together, which is a terrible thing to feel in this situation, but I am trying to be honest. The blood test man had, in the meantime, told his seat neighbors about me. I walked in the direction of the toilet, went in, locked the door, and stood there in that tiny space for 4 minutes, staring at myself in the mirror, having what I can only describe as a debrief with my own reflection. I rehearsed 3 different exits. Option 1, get off at this station, get a later train, never see any of these people again. Option 2, come back to my seat, take a fake phone call, pretend to be called away for an emergency, get off at the next stop. Option 3, come clean, apologize, explain that a small misunderstanding spiraled and I panicked, and I am so sorry, please forgive me. The back pain advice is still probably fine though. I went with option 2. I came out of the toilet. I walked back to my seat. I sat down. I waited approximately 90 seconds. Then I answered my phone, which had not rung. I just pressed the button and started talking. I said, "Yes, now? Right, okay." I got off at a station that was 40 minutes before my actual destination, carried my bag and my Tupperware of dal across the platform, sat on a bench and waited an hour for the next train. I arrived home 2 hours late. My flatmate asked why. I said, "Long story. I have not taken that train route since. Now look, I am not proud of all of this. I want to be clear about that. I should have corrected the first misunderstanding immediately. Full stop. The moment that man asked if I was going to the medical conference, the answer was no. I am a sales professional with dal in my bag." That was the answer. Everything after that was a choice I made, and those choices were bad. But here is the thing I have thought about many times since that day. Every single piece of advice I gave was basically fine. Rest, hydration, posture, see your actual doctor. None of it was wrong. It was just very, very general, which, now that I think about it, is also what my actual GP tells me every time I go. So maybe the real lesson here is that common sense is 90% of medicine. Or maybe the lesson is, do not agree with strangers on trains when they ask you if you are a professional. Either way, I am not a doctor. Please do not ask me about your blood test results. But here is what I genuinely want to know. And I mean this, I want you to answer this in the comments right now. If you were in that situation, If a complete stranger on a train looked at you and decided with full confidence that you were a doctor or a lawyer or a pilot or whatever, would you correct them immediately, or would you just for a moment go along with it just a little, just to see where it goes? Because I think most of us, if we are being fully honest, have said something vague and nodded confidently in a situation where we had absolutely no idea what was happening. We have all been in a meeting pretending to understand. We have all nodded at a technician like we know what they are talking about. We have all been the trained doctor in some small way. Drop it in the comments. Tell me what you would do. And bonus points if you have ever accidentally convinced someone you were something you were not. I have a feeling I am not alone in this, and I need the company. And if this story made you feel slightly better about your own life decisions, genuinely, you are welcome. That is what we do here on Crazy Tales. Every week, we bring you a new story, a new situation, a new moment where one very ordinary person made a series of completely understandable but deeply questionable choices. And we laugh about it together because honestly, what else can you do? If you want more stories like this one, hit subscribe, ring that bell because I upload new chaos every single week and I would hate for you to miss what comes next. Share this with someone who also has that face. You know the one, the face that makes strangers trust you with things you have no business being trusted with. They will know exactly what I mean. I will see you in the next story. Stay safe out there. And please, if someone on a train asks if you are a doctor, just say no. Learn from me. Just say no.